And let me just read the quote for our audience and get your feedback on if you could maybe clarify what your thoughts are on this. It says, since not all mobile apps come with the same level of required security, IT managers must consider different application deployment and management strategies. So can you give us an example of what would be some different application deployment and management strategies?
Well, let me give you an analogy.
Okay.
So, for example, I can go out and I can buy lawn furniture, and I can spend $3,000 on a couple of chairs and a table, and I leave it outside. I can then go out and spend $3,000 on a riding mower. I won't leave it outside. I'll keep that in my garage, right? I can then go and spend $3,000 on a painting. I'm not going to leave that in the garage. It's going to go in my house. I can then spend $3,000 on a set of diamond earrings. I'm going to put that in a safe, right?
Yes.
It's the same price point for all of these objects, but some have this higher perceived value and therefore a higher security requirement than others. You know, I would not put a lawn chair in my safe. I would not leave earrings on the front lawn, even though the value is exactly the same. So for applications, it's the same basic framework. Some applications have incredibly high security requirements because it accesses critical enterprise data, customer data, financial data, et cetera. So for those kind of applications, you want this thing bolted down as tightly as you can. Some stuff may be externally facing, and the security requirements are not as onerous. So again, you know, what we need to do is define, and this is part of the governance policy. That is something that Afaria handles really well. You can assign governance policies based on who the user is, what kind of an application they're going to be accessing, what kind of process flow they're going to be working with, and then define your security policy driven by your internal governance requirements.
Understood. So how does that relate to the other concept in the press release about the enterprise app store? When I think of app store, it's almost like self-service. You go in and pick and choose what you want and download it. But if there are different deployment and management strategies and security strategies for these different apps, how would that work in a world of an enterprise app store?
Right. So the whole self-service portal thing is basically a consumer paradigm. And so that's the model that people are used to. Now, of course, with the enterprise app store, it's a more complex app. There are, again, like I said, higher security requirements. So the governance policy is something that is set up as a configuration component for that application on the device. So when you buy an app from a business app store or an enterprise app store, you log in, the system knows who you are, it knows what your rights are based on your company's governance policies, and then when it downloads the app is automatically configured for you to include, you know, can access this, cannot access that, has, you know, the following IP configuration, and it sets it all up for you. So if it's done correctly, the App Store working through Afaria as a provisioning mechanism actually assigns what your rights are, what your security requirements are, and that is addressed at the time that the app is deployed so that the end user, who is probably not technical, doesn't have to get mired in all the details.
So if I envision this correctly, probably just by logging in, you would see a view of the App Store of just what apps are available to you.
That's one of the things that is currently in development. That is correct.
Okay, very interesting. So that resolves
that's the model we're going to. So
okay.
Yeah.
Now, you also mentioned in the press release something called App Store Volume Purchasing Program for Businesses. It says a new platform that simplifies the buying and deployment of B2B mobile apps, including custom apps built by third-party developers. Can you share with the audience what your thoughts are on that, and what does that mean?
Well, so, you know, again, we're not, because this is a different purchase model, you know, it's not one guy going in and buying one app, you know, to play a game while he's waiting for a train or something. You know, but this is, IT decides that this application, you know, and it could be some form of, you know, sales workflow, for example, is something that they want their sales force to have. And their sales force is, let's say, 7,000 people. Okay, so you have to create a framework that allows 7,000 people to buy this app, have it downloaded, have it configured correctly, and have it be done consistently with governance policies that IT has already put in place for that particular group of employees. And, you know, and some of the companies that we're dealing with have tens of thousands or sometimes hundreds of thousands of employees. who all want to go through the process of mobilization. So the way we approach it has to be done differently because the operating framework is operating on a much bigger scale, right? It's thousands of people doing something at the same time, and you're going to have large groups. So in other words, the pricing model has to reflect the way the software is being bought, and it's being bought in large numbers.
Yes.
Which is not the same as you or I going and downloading Angry Birds or something.
Right, and the support requirements will be different and all kinds of things.
Because it's a more complex app. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So it also kind of the last section of that statement says including custom apps built by third-party developers. So to me that must represent some level of certification where just like in the Apple App Store, you need to go through some kind of certification process and get an approval to load your app up there. Do you envision something like that?
Yes. So, part of our long-term interest, what is going to make mobility successful in the enterprise ultimately is the availability of a wide range of applications that enable productivity, enable workers to work more efficiently. So our focus really now is to create a framework that allows as many apps as possible to get built. However, the applications have to work, right? I mean, if you download an app and it doesn't do what it's supposed to, then you've taken what could be a very positive experience and flipped it. So the certification process, if you want to develop applications, within an enterprise ecosystem, you have to get certified. You have to register. The applications have to be vetted. Once they've been vetted, then and those applications also have to be consistent with IT governance policies. So there's the process is a bit more stringent than you would find for a consumer app.
Right.
So for example, you go to the Android marketplace and it's kind of like the wild, wild west. There's a lot of apps, but there's a lot of apps that are frankly not that good.
Right.
Apple is a bit more tightly controlled, so the apps tend to be a little bit better. This is a whole different level of what we have to do because the applications are accessing critical information. Right?
Got it. So
if I misfire on Angry Birds, it's annoying, but it doesn't kill me. But if I get access to something critical and it blows up, then I put company data at risk. That's what we're trying to avoid.
So who would actually do this vetting of apps? Would this be a vendor with a custom third-party app would pay a certification fee which would cover the cost of Sybase guys doing this, or how do you see that working?
No, those details are still being worked out.
Okay.
This is something that we are actually going to go into in more detail later on this year. And so it's probably going to be a combination of, is it the customer, is it SAP, is it Sybase, is it the developer working in conjunction, do we pull in a third party?
Right.
All of that is still to be determined. But there are a lot of very smart people working very hard on this right now.
So what kind of time frames do you have for this actually hitting the market and being available, these programs?
We will be, in theory, previewing this later on this year. We have a couple of large events coming up. And we are actually the target date for the full-blown, here's everything kind of scenario, from what I've been told, is looking like it's going to be Sapphire in Orlando next year.
Okay.
So there will be a preview later on this year, and then and the preview will actually be, the beginning of this process with some very strong examples.
Yes.
SAP has done a great job of cranking out really high-grade apps, and so this is the framework for deployment. But as I'm sure you can appreciate, it's a very complex process.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
it's going to take a bit longer to get it off the ground. So we are targeting next year for the full-blown thing. We will have interesting things to show later this year.
Yeah, so Prashant Chatterjee, who's a vice president with SAP Mobility, said that he could imagine there might ultimately be thousands of applications interacting with SAP. So I absolutely can appreciate the need to have some kind of a process in which you're ensuring that the apps are quality that are interacting with SAP data. So I can certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, I know Prashant, and I totally agree.
Yes. So what is the most, I'll just wrap it up here, Dan, with this last question. What is the most significant finding to you personally from this survey that you guys sponsored?
Let's see. I mean, there's some odd things. No, I think it's. I think what there are no real surprises. it's just more confirmation of what we thought. I mean, I guess the core takeaway here is, is the comment about, apps are the future. We're looking at, and again, this is a very overworn phrase, but it's the consumerization of IT. It's the mobilization of the enterprise. And this thing, we're in a rapid expansion phase, and I've been in the IT industry, technology industry for over 25 years, so I've gone through several phases of massive technology shifts. And there's one going on right now, and it's at the enterprise level, right? And so we're seeing a massive technology shift now, and it's actually a very cool space to be in. So, we have always, while the iPhone and the iPad are totally cool devices, it's the app that makes you buy them. And so the need for applications at the enterprise level that can be accessed across a broad range of mobile devices, that's the core driver. And so getting those apps out in a secure and controlled manner is our focus. I think that will lead to the same kind of growth rate at the business side that we've seen on the consumer side. So I think we're seeing validation of what we saw as long-term strategic trends that we've been, I think so far, been pretty good at taking advantage of.
And I would agree with that. And what's interesting to me, Dan, is I've been following both Sybase for actually almost a decade now, and SAP for about half that time. What's interesting to me is how much I can see SAP influencing Sybase to really think about all these big enterprise issues, which were not really on your radar before the acquisition. Would you agree with that statement?
No, I think Sybase has always been enterprise focused, but we've been focused differently. Sybase has always been very strong at the technical sale.
Yeah.
We've been very good going in and selling to IT, and SAP has been very good at the business sale.
Yep.
So, for example, they're very good at selling verticalized solutions, right? We're very good at selling horizontal solutions that can affect a variety of industries. So we have a vertical presence in a number of industries, but it's a number of companies in a vertical buying a platform as opposed to buying something that's specific. Now, there's exceptions to this. For example, we're very strong in financial services and capital markets. But, for example, manufacturing or retail, that's what SAP does well. So the reason that these two companies are working well together is SAP has this huge install base of SAP business applications that need to be mobilized.
Yes.
So we bring the mobility technology. We then work with the vertical experts at SAP to create a verticalized, mobilized application that can be used by their end customers.
Very good. Well, Dan, I want to thank you so much for sharing with our audience today. And are you going to be at TechEd here next month? Or I should say 2 months.
Yes, I believe I will.
All right. Well, I look forward to meeting you.
In Las Vegas, yes, I'll be there.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thanks again for sharing.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your time.